All right. Thank you for checking out this video. This is Cat on the Back with part 2 of the devlog updates for this week. Um, and this one, we're going to be covering. Going to be going continuing on, doing the code review. Then we're going to show how all this mixed together, how the enemies code and the spawning code and the scrolling screens and all the other stuff, how that all mixed together into nice one hot dish. Because basically we're basically cooking a nice recipe here with all these codes and all these codes are different ingredients, and we about to go see how this is going to come together in the game afterwards. So if you if you like my content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I don't know if that said that yet, but other than that, let's go ahead and kick this off. All right, so we went over the enemy attacking in the combat with the enemy in the previous video. In this video, we'll go over now the enemy spawning. Um, enemy spawning. How I'd set the spawning up. Okay. All right, here it is. All right, so right now, how the enemy is being spawned, because I should actually, with this enemy spawning code, should have really been here, but I'll change that later on. But here's our actual global variable where it says enemies to beat. And our enemies to beat, I already mentioned in the previous video, this just basically tells the game how many enemies does the player need to beat before moving to the next role. All right, and moving to the next area. All right. And here is the scrolling screen. I had one issue. It took me a minute to get this together. Once again, I took a little bit, much of this from the beat 'em up tutorial on Construct. So because it was harder. I was having issues with trying to get a scrolling screen together, scrolling camera together, and it was very, very difficult for me to get to figure out how to get it working. So I had to use an example, which was the scrolling screens, the scrolling cameras example there. This is going to be subject to change later on because I'm just basically just trying to get it so that I have an idea what it looks like in the game before I start finalizing things in the future. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. We see that we got the scrolling screen. I got right now what I'm doing is I'm doing something called I'm messing with the scroll X. I have a couple of global variables here. One with the screen height and width, one with the max scroll Y, and one the max scroll X, and also scrolling. What these do, they just check to make sure is the screen scrolling. Just check to see can the screen scroll or not. That's basically it. Uh, Max X and Y that basically is handling getting the max scroll value for that it's getting the max that the max that the room can scroll by. Basically, how fast can the screen move? Trying to summarize that in the best way I can, but that's the best way I could for right now. Then, like I said, I'm getting the enemies, the screen, um, the screen matrices right there. All right, so now I'm doing a check. I'm saying, okay, right here, I'm doing saying is scroll X greater than max scroll? If it's yes, then we go ahead and continue on. So then what we're doing is if not scrolling, what we're doing is we're clamping. We're clamping the room to the player. Basically, all we're doing is following the player at this point. And I'm running several clamps on both the X and Y axis for the player. And we are pretty much um we pretty much are just getting basically are clamping the camera to the player with this right here. Then I'm saying if scrolling is equal to is true, then we want to go ahead and we want to scroll. If not, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. If not scrolling, pretty much we just want to basically we just want to basically keep the player clamped to the room. Basically, we want to keep them contained inside the room. That's pretty much all that is. If we are scrolling, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna follow the player. Which that's what we're doing right here. Then we're doing a couple of checks. And then we're saying if our X is higher than max scroll, then go ahead and follow the player. That's pretty much what this lerp is doing, basically having so it's following the player. Else, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna basically clamp the player to the room. Basically, we want to have it so that he cannot leave the room until the enemies are defeated, pretty much. Then we got the zones, which this is we kind of a object known as zone. I'm trying to figure out where it's at. Right here, this guy. And on here, we just got a few things. All we got, the only thing we're getting here is the ID of the zone. We getting these other variables here too, which we getting the maximum and minimum Y values as well, and also getting something called getting a couple of things. We also are getting the current zone that we're in. So basically, what it does is it checks to see what zone are we in, because what is important here, if the player collides with the zone, what that zone does, it goes ahead and adds an ID to the it basically increments the zone ID by whatever the value is of the zone at that time, because we're hard coding the value of that ID in there. And what that does is we go ahead and we set the zone ID to whatever the current zone is of the player. So basically what we're doing is we're saying here, when you collide with the zone, and if the zone ID is higher than the player's current zone, then what we're going to do, we're going to scroll to the minimum X and Y, to the minimum Y, the minimum or the max Y for that zone, and then go ahead and we're going to then we'll go ahead and set the current zone to the new zone ID. And that's what happens. And then we have another part here which says if stopping, what that means is pretty much did the player go ahead and defeat all the enemies. Actually, when it's stopping, basically when it stops scrolling, it basically go ahead and says set scrolling to false. It means it's not going to move anymore, and it's going to set the enemies to beat to 0. That's all it's going to do. Basically, it says, okay, you defeated enemies in the last area. In this area, we see you didn't defeat anybody yet, so defeat these enemies before we can move on again. And that's pretty much what happens. And then after that, it goes into this for loop right here. It basically checks the zone ID, which I have another object in the game called eSpawner, which is the enemy spawner, and I have a instance variable within that that's called ID step. And what that does is it goes if that equal and if that's and it sets this value to whatever it checks to see if the ID of the it basically checks to see is the if the it's a lot to talk about. So it basically checks to see if the enemy spawner has the same ID as the zone ID. Basically, if they both match. If they match, then go ahead and create enemies. So what I'm doing is I'm calling this function called create enemy, which is what we created, what I went over in the previous video, which is this one right here. So it's gonna go ahead and summon the monk. And that's pretty much it. And then what's going to happen is it's just going to go ahead and check to see is the enemies to beat is less than equal to 0, and then go ahead and set scrolling to true. And that's all that happens. So let's go ahead and do a quick game playthrough of it real quick, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. All right. All right, so here we are in the game right now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit this trigger button right. We're going to hit this trigger right here. And it summoned our enemies right here. These are our number of enemies. So now we're going to go ahead and fight them. Oh, let's see, now they got stuck on each other. I got to figure that out. But you see that now when they disappear, it went ahead and set the enemy counter to 0. So what we do, we could go ahead and scroll. We could run, scroll to the next level. Once we hit the trigger right here, you see how it stopped. Now we can't leave the room right now until we defeat these enemies. Okay, we defeated them. You see enemy counter went to 1. Slice them up again. And now we're able to go ahead and run again. Now, I have an issue with it right now. I haven't figured out how to get this thing to go ahead and scroll to the right to through the Y yet, but I'm gonna do that too. Well, I see how this enemy just came from below there to try to attack me. But yeah, but you see that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm gonna continue on working on it. This is not going the final version of what I'm trying to do, especially with the scroll screens. I have something else in mind as to what I want to do. So this is just so I could go ahead and show you guys, give you guys a quick update, and also get it so I can get some gameplay, get some gameplay out there. So I go ahead and figure out, is this what I want? Is this something I could take away, I take out of the game, or can I use this script as an example to get something even better in the future, get to produce something even better. So but other than that, that's pretty much it for this video. I thank you guys all those who are taking the time to check out my videos. If once again, if you like my content, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to see other games by myself, please go ahead and check out the description below. You see the 3 games that I already created in the past, which is Ninja Go Home, Super Baby, and also Space Fighter. Other than that, I thank you for checking out this video. This is Counting Back, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.